Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Dr. Sue and You. I am your host, Dr. Sue. Today we're talking again about divorce. Why not? It's so rampant all over the country and the world. So we need tons and tons of advice on knowing how to get through this. Today I have with me in studio is Renee Bauer. She is an award-winning divorce attorney, published author, and founder of the family law firm Happy Even After Family Law. I need to know more about this because people talk all the time about their attorneys and going to court, and they're not happy even after family law. So let's bring her in and find out more about this. Hi Renee, welcome to the show.
Hi Dr. Sue, thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. So, right off the bat, I'm interested in knowing, can you really be happy even after family law?
Absolutely. And I can tell you that it has very little to do what goes into your final divorce agreement or what the court orders, and it has everything to do with mindset and how you think about your life after divorce. And it really doesn't matter how much alimony you're getting or what your parenting schedule looks like, and people don't want to hear that, but the shift from being stuck to happy even after really begins and ends with you.
So that's very interesting that you say that, because people that are litigating, right, they come in, they want to know what are they going to get out of this divorce, custody, all of this, or going back and forth. It's very conflictual. And then it ends.
Right.
And so
Right.
there is life after divorce. And
Right.
what kind of mindset are you talking about when you mention that in terms of getting to a happy place after these kinds of divorces?
So, Dr. Sue, what happens when people go to attorneys and they hire someone, they expect their attorneys to fix all of the problems and all of the issues that are keeping them up at night. And they'll look to their lawyer and they'll say, you have to get me enough money so that I can pay my bills. And you have to get me the parenting schedule that I want. And then they'll look to their ex and they'll say, you're the reason why I'm miserable, or you're the reason why I don't have enough to pay my bills, or you're the reason why I miss my kids. And the problem is they're looking to external sources to fix or solve the thing that is keeping them up, rather than looking inward to fix their own situation. So, for example, the minute someone says, okay, you know what, money might be a little tight, but I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to figure out what I need to do in order to have enough to pay my bills, and I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with my time when I miss my kids. And the shift is not giving your power away and expecting someone else to fix the problems, but instead resolving your own problems and turning inward and saying, I'm taking back control, I'm taking back the power, and I'm going to define what my life now looks like. And it is a subtle shift, but it makes all of the difference in coming out the other end with a peace of mind and really stepping into that mindset where you can thrive post-divorce.
But Renee, I'm paying you all this money. Aren't you supposed to solve all of my problems and get me everything that I want? What do I have to do with this? I'm sure you hear this daily. Look, I think what you're talking about is spot on, okay? This is the kind of work that I do, and you really have to go within yourself to get out of what you are in emotionally. But that isn't always easy for people to do. This is a very emotional roller coaster that goes on. They don't know how to deal with a lot of things that are being thrown at them by the other party, or even how to communicate. What do you see is the best way to handle going through a divorce? I'm guessing that you're going to say you need much more than an attorney to get through this successfully.
Well, you do, but you also need to recognize that you are in the driver's seat. So someone who just hires a lawyer and expects the lawyer to do all of the work for them and just lead the way is going to be a little bit at a disadvantage. Hiring a lawyer is great, but it is not everything. And it really becomes each individual's responsibility to educate themselves so they know what's going on every step of the way. And Dr. Sue, we see this all of the time with someone maybe who wasn't responsible for the finances in the marriage, and their spouse always paid the bills. And now they have to deal with the money, and they don't want to. It's uncomfortable. They've never had to do it before. So they pass that off to someone else. They wait for their lawyer to tell them how much money they need to pay their bills, or they wait for someone else to tell them what to do, and that's a mistake. They need to really dig in and get comfortable with the things that they never had to do before. And because when they do that, now they're empowered. Now they start to understand what money looks like in terms of their financial independence and what they need to do to stand on their own two feet. They really need to take control of the process themselves. And if they don't know something, ask questions. That's what your lawyer's there for. Go to them and ask the questions. And it doesn't matter if there are a lot of questions. There aren't any stupid questions. It's their responsibility to educate themselves so they understand. And ultimately, if they sign an agreement, they know what they're signing and all of the consequences and ramifications of that, rather than allowing their attorney just to sign it because it's the best deal that they can get. They really need to take ownership of that process themselves as well.
And so within your law firm, which is out of Connecticut, correct?
Correct.
Do you work with mostly women, and do you empower them, as you're talking to me, to really go within and heal themselves, take care of themselves, show themselves compassion, and really work towards becoming somebody different than who they were in the marriage?
Yeah, so we work equally with men and women. And in the firm, and we do a lot of mindset coaching. It's part of our legal representation. And just by our name, Happy Even After Family Law, I think that just sort of sets us apart as a little bit different, because we're not just a string of last names in a kind of a typical law firm, because we really recognize the holistic approach to divorce and coming out the other side. And listen, we want our clients to feel empowered at the end of this, and we want them to be excited about their future. We don't want them coming back to us over and over again for post-judgment motions after their divorce. Success is them moving on and saying, okay, this was just a moment in my life, but now I'm ready to move on, and them reflecting back and telling us how they've been able to move on. And we hear from clients all the time a year later that say, wow, like I've never been happier, and I didn't even know that I was that unhappy. So divorce law is so much more than just applying legal standards. There really is a holistic approach to it to help the client every step of the way beyond just the agreement.
Well, I'm loving what I'm hearing here, because you often do not hear this about family law firms, that you are taking this holistic approach, which is absolutely needed. This is what we believe at Dr. Sue and you. And it's not just your lawyer doing the litigation. It is so critical that people are in a positive mindset to get through this, even in the toughest of times, because if they're not, it doesn't only affect what is going on in their legal battles, but with their children and custody as well.
Absolutely. And I've been through 2 divorces. I have a son, and I have a beautiful co-parenting relationship. And I can tell you that kids aren't impacted by the divorce itself. They're impacted by conflict. And
Yes.
Your children are going to be so much better off if they have 2 parents living in separate households and who are able to be civil and co-parent together. They're not going to have those same negative impact that we see of high conflict cases that happen. So yes, absolutely, we advocate for parents to co-parent. We advocate for communication between them, and it doesn't help anyone to throw gasoline on the fire of already a difficult time, and that's not our business model. And I think any attorneys that do that really do a disservice to their clients.
I couldn't agree with you more on that note, but something that you just said there was extremely powerful to me, so I want you to repeat it, and let's see if I got that right, okay? Let's see if I heard it right. What affects kids the most is not the actual divorce, it's the conflict between the 2 parents that does.
Absolutely. It is absolutely.
You nailed it. You really did. Like if I had a dart, I would throw it right into the middle of the bullseye.
Yeah. And there's studies about this, and there's studies of the consequences of what happens to kids when they're caught in the middle. And kids are smart. they know. They pick up on cues and they start to modify their own behaviors based on if they think mom or dad is going to get angry if they come back and said they had a great time with the other parent. And that happens all of the time, and that's really sad. We want the children to have really healthy, close relationships with both parents, and that requires both parents to encourage that and facilitate it. Even though it's hard, and even though your own personal feelings about your ex may turn up some other emotions, it doesn't matter. It's not about you. It's not about your relationship that you had or your marriage that you had. It is all about your children.
I can't express to you how much I'm enjoying this conversation with you right now, because you are really talking about exactly what needs to be done to have a peaceful connection for your children, even in the worst of divorces, because it can happen if you choose that path to do it. But you have to choose that path as an individual to make this happen. And even if the other party is coming to you in a negative way, right, Renee, you can still make this happen.
Absolutely.
Why don't people understand that, Renee? They don't understand that they have that power within them to make this better, even if the other party is being adversarial.
I tell clients all the time they don't have to show up to every fight they're invited to.
I love that.
They can change the tone of the conversation. If they choose not to meet their spouse there, they're the ones who can control the conversation by bringing it back. Yep. And that doesn't mean that the spouse is getting the last word. It doesn't mean that the spouse won the conversation, because there aren't any winners if the conflict remains high. So you have the power to control how you respond to that conflict.
Another great tip that you're giving people. You're absolutely right. I mean, you do have certain choices that you can make. I've talked about this on many other shows. You don't have to go down that negative road with the person that's calling you names or saying you're a horrible parent. You can turn that around and focus on what is necessary and important, and that is creating a way to communicate with the other party. And you actually can have control over that.
You absolutely can. And we hear all the time people will respond to that and they'll say, but you don't understand, my ex is really difficult. And you, even when you have someone who is a high conflict co-parent, you still have the ability to take control of that or shut it down and not meet them there and not respond if their tone is trying to ruffle feathers or cause conflict. You can choose not to respond.
You can choose to become the solution to any conflict in your life. That's what we believe here at Dr. Sue and You, and it does begin with you. And you're absolutely correct there. If somebody is continuously bombarding you with text messages that are negative, you do not have to respond. In fact, you could just text back. When you are able to talk to me in a polite and respectful way, I will re-engage with you in this conversation. That's all you need to say, and go on your merry way.
Yeah.
But it takes. Go ahead.
I like to tell people that, they can even be proactive in it. The simplest of things, such as showing up at maybe a soccer game that your kids have and you're both going to be there, showing up with a coffee for your ex and saying, hey, I got this for you, sets the tone for the rest of the communication for that day. And when you do things like that over and over, it makes it harder for your ex to respond in a different way. And so you're almost training them to be civil, and you do have the power to do that, and people need to recognize that because it's so powerful.
Absolutely, a great example. And maybe you don't bring coffee because they may think, oh, it's poison, some of them. but you're exactly right, Renee. Keep coming with the same kind actions over and over. You can write words to people, but it's your actions that actually create change in someone's mind. All right, we are having a great conversation. I am speaking with Renee Bauer. She is a family law attorney, and she knows how to do this right. And when we come back, we will have more with her right after the break.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hip hop.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hip hop.
Now that's New Jersey. 130 miles of beautiful beaches. Solid rock. And everything in between.
Look in the window.
Now that's New Jersey. Plan your New Jersey trip at visitnj.org. Waves of fun. Nights of excitement. And a trail of memories. Now that's New Jersey.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dr. Sue and You. So glad you're joining me today. I'm talking to a stellar lawyer here who actually gets what needs to happen so you can survive your divorce and live the life that you want to live. Her name is Renee Bauer. She is a family law attorney in Connecticut with the law firm Happy Even After Family Law. Let's bring her right back in. Hi, Renee.
Hi again.
Hi, we're having such a, I was going to say compassionate, but it's passionate conversation today. But let's go to that word compassionate and compassion for a minute. Because as you may know, I do not believe that you can solve conflict with conflict, but I do believe that with compassion, you can solve most conflicts in your life over time. And I think when it comes to family law, where you need to have the most compassion is for your children. If you do have children within the marriage. And I think people forget that sometimes. And I think they also forget to have compassion for each other. They're so into this conflict that they don't think about each party is actually hurting here. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, and that's such a great point because often when you see custody disputes, both people are fighting for the same thing. They want the most amount of time with their kids. And if you step back and really dig into, okay, what are each of the parties' goals and how can we accomplish them, we can usually get to an agreement because both of their intentions are really good. But it takes exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Sue, is some compassion for the other person's position and why they feel that way. And if you kind of peel the layers back of that onion and uncover why it is someone is fighting so hard for something, it usually has to do with that fear, the fear of missing their kids or not seeing them or missing out on them growing up. So I think that compassion can settle cases if people come to the table willing to have a frank conversation about why they feel the way they do or why they're digging their heels into something.
Right. It's not always that one party just despises the other party and wants to ruin them. I mean, that does happen in some cases. But I think you're on point when you said the other person, like yourself, wants the same things. They want time with their kids. They don't want special occasions being broken up. all these kinds of things. But what ends up happening is when one parent asks for an extra day or an extra time, and the other parent says no, well, do you think you're really going to get that back too? That elicits anger in the other person. So really be careful about the choices that you're making as well.
Yeah, and we see that all the time with summer break or vacation, where one parent wants to go away and the rental is a Saturday to Saturday, and it cuts into the other parent's parenting weekend, and someone says, no, that's my time. And then you ask the question, well, why? Like, why is it a no? Is there a resolution where both people can be happy and talking about a trade-off? But sometimes people just dig in and they say the no just because it's a no. They want to, they don't want to give up their time, and they're not really focusing their answer on their child. They're focusing on themselves because they don't want to lose the time. And there's always some sort of solution in that circumstance. And yet that example is one that we see over and over again every summer.
Yes. And during winter vacations too, and the holidays. But somebody else that was on my show said something really important. I'm wondering if you agree with this. Her name is Gabby Gass, and she said, stop thinking of yourself as the ex and just think of yourself as a parent. And the mom or the dad, and she said she was through a divorce too, just like you. She said that changed her whole way of communicating with her ex because she was putting her children first all the time and thinking about what they needed before what she may have needed from the ex.
Oh, I love that. I think that that's perfect. I completely agree with that. And to add to that, not just what your children need, but what your children may enjoy.
Yes.
So if you giving up some time means that your child's vacation can be extended, or they can see some grandparents from the other side, then that takes precedent over you losing a little bit of time. And so it's need and what would your child enjoy?
Exactly. And we're talking the same language because when it comes down to it, it's all about the kids. Just like you said before. It's about the children, not about the actual divorce. It's great. All right, let's switch over here for a little now onto a different topic that is very prevalent, even in celebrity divorces, okay? We know this because we've heard interviews from celebrities on this. There is a lot of shame around divorce and embarrassment, especially when it's in a high conflict and your kids, you may not see your kids and the back and forth about that people don't want to really talk to other people or their friends about what is going on. And that's really hard on the individual because they're hiding secrets. And when you hide secrets and you live in shame and embarrassment, you are not being free to live your life. And I bet you see that a lot. And when we live in shame, Renee, we cannot love either properly.
This is my favorite topic ever to talk about because I was that person who lived with shame. So I'm a divorce lawyer who showed up every single day and did my job all buttoned up. And I'd get home at night and I'd be sort of a broken version of myself because I never spoke about the shame that I had, not with just one divorce, but two divorces. And the second divorce was like a really double whammy of shame. And I never talked about it. And then I actually started to, a good friend of mine asked me to be on her podcast. And when I went on there, she started asking me about my divorce. And for the first time ever, I started talking about that and the shame. And had women reach out all over to connect and say that was my story too. And then I realized that the more we talk about our story and talk about the shame, the less shame we actually have.
Yes.
So now I can talk about my two divorces. It's just a thing that happened. It was a moment in my life. I have absolutely no shame from it anymore. So when we start sharing stories and being upfront about them, that's when the shame just sort of drips away a little bit at a time until it's completely gone.
I thank you so much for sharing that. That is, wonderful that you could talk about, and you were just very vulnerable right there, which I really appreciate. And when we are vulnerable and when we can be authentic with others and we can verbalize what is trapped inside of us, the shame goes down so much. Look, there's no one in this life that has gone untouched by something. And when you're holding that shame within yourself, you're holding yourself back from really healing and living a full life after divorce. And your kids don't want you to live that way either. So really go within and try to work that out within yourself. One thing I will add to that, Renee, is just be very careful who you are sharing that information with. Brene Brown, who is very famous for shame work, she talks a lot about that in one of her books, that not everybody deserves to hear your most vulnerable thoughts and feelings. So really make sure it's with somebody that you trust and feel safe with.
Absolutely. And to add to that, I'm not talking about showing up and disparaging your ex or telling every stranger what happened to cause the breakdown of your marriage. That's not what I'm talking at all. I'm talking about just owning up who you are and saying to someone that, yes, I'm divorced. And so what? And without an explanation.
Right.
And just kind of owning that part of your story without having to apologize for it or without having to explain the why. So I agree with you. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, sure. And also being able to say, yes, I'm divorced. Things are very difficult right now. Thank you for your concern. I mean, that's all you have to say. You don't have to go into details about it with everybody that asks. And that's putting a good boundary up for yourself. All right, thank you for that. We have to wrap up the show already, but tell me a little bit about your podcast, where people can listen, and this new course you have, the D course.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Happy Even After with Ms. Renee Bauer. It is a stripped down, unfiltered place where we tell positive stories. We're not going to dish about the acts, but we're going to talk about rising above adversity, the art of reinvention, and bringing on experts that can bring some light to the divorce process and life beyond divorce. So that can be found on any listening platform. And my course is an online video education course called the D course that's meant to be a first step towards examining, okay, now what? You decided you wanted a divorce, and now what do you do? So it's all about educating yourself and becoming familiar with the terminology and the things that you need to think about, including mindset and setting appropriate expectations. So you can find all of that on my website at msreneebauer.com.
Wonderful. I was just going to ask you where people can get in touch with you, and you just told us. And so I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. You really have opened up my mind to the fact that there are very good lawyers out there that are really helping people in the right way. And I mean, I think your brand is amazing. Happy even after family law, that you can be happy even after the worst of divorces, but you have to go within yourself and do that work to come out of it in a better place. I mean, you're a poster child for that, right? You've done it yourself.
I have, and it's not a linear healing process.
No.
It takes time and it takes grace and it takes just being kind to yourself.
Doesn't everything in life, Renee, in terms of relationships, takes a lot of time to heal from? It really does, especially when you've been through so much trauma in your life. It is, and there's bumps in the road too.
Absolutely.
But anything that's worthwhile is worth working on. That's what I say. Not fighting for, working on.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You've been an amazing guest today. Just tell people one more time where they can get in touch with you, please.
Sure, on my website, msreneebauer.com, or over on Instagram is kind of my favorite place to hang out, and that's at Ms. Renee Bauer. And you can certainly send me a message, and I check all of them and answer everyone.
Well, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a lot of great work, and thank you for coming on today and sharing it with the world.
Thank you, Dr. Sue.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another edition of Dr. Sue and You. I just feel so uplifted after having on a guest such as Renee Bauer, because she is really understanding what it takes to heal from your divorce. And she understands that with compassion, you can cure any conflict within your life. And remember always that you can become the solution to any conflict within your life, but it starts within. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.